Welcome back to another episode of Red Zone Talk. I'm Owen Burke. He's Tim Hunt. That was me scooting my microphone towards me because I felt like I was a mile away. We're here, week three. Um, as you can tell by the logo that's on my t-shirt, I'm not much of a happy camper right about now, but we've still got to talk about some football because as depressing as they may be, there are some ridiculous storylines flying around the NFL by team basis and player by player basis. So we've got a ton to talk about this week, a nice, juicy pump the brakes section for you guys. And we're going to see if I can turn it around on the year for bets because I'm 2-4. It's not looking good. I've definitely had the worst two picks of the year by far, too. So we'll get into all that at the end of the show once we get there. But before we get to all that jazz, we got to get some headlines out of the way. And boy, do we got some juicy ones this week.
Yeah, I mean, we're gonna start with the obvious. I think the hottest one out there, Bryce Young officially being benched for Andy Dalton. Um, I'm very curious to see if it's ends up being for the whole season. Is this a temporary fix? I'm not really sure. I think the biggest thing that surprised me is how early in the season they're doing this. Uh, week two is early.
Yeah.
That's a fast commitment to turn it into. So.
Yeah, I can't make up my mind about it because again, we don't know what it's for, right? Like if this is kind of like a baseball move, send a guy to AAA, reset him, let him just kind of rebuild some confidence, and then throw him back out there. I don't think it's a terrible idea, but I mean, if this is just flat bench, we're looking at Andy Dalton to try to save the season. I'm like, what season were you expecting? Like, what are you trying to save? The
Yeah.
6 wins that you thought were capable? Like, there's not a high ceiling to this team. So, I mean, if it's for the growth of Bryce Young, I'm all for it, right? I just don't know what the motivation is because if they're like Dave Canales is like, well, we got to win games, brother. They didn't bring in the quarterback whisperer that supposedly fixed Baker and a laundry list of other guys to ditch Bryce Young in week two. That's not what they brought you here for. It's quite literally the exact opposite of why you got hired, actually. So I don't know. I'm very conflicted to say the least. Like I don't know how I feel about it at all. I think it's crazy. That's for dang sure.
They don't even really have a tough schedule per se, but they had like the Saints are obviously playing well, the Chargers are playing well. Their next four is Raiders, Bengals, Bears, Falcons. So I don't know if I necessarily understand the call. Uh, and then the next two after that is Commanders, Broncos. So I why now is the thing that's confusing me. I think it has to be David Tepper meddling. That's the only thing in my mind that would make any sense is why you would do this now so early. Um, and it probably is going to be put Andy Dalton out there, and if he looks halfway decent, probably play him the rest of the year. Um, which
If that's
might
the case, my heart goes out to Carolina Panthers fans. Like that's just it's not good for business. It's not good for football.
yeah.
They're going to struggle to find a head coach eventually, or struggle to pay one because you're going to have to overpay guys to get them there, and then after you overpay four guys and fire them a year in, all of a sudden you're pretty strapped for cash.
They were on my short list of teams that probably would think about drafting a QB this year.
Yeah.
Um, I hope this isn't the end of Bryce Young because I think there is an ability to play.
Yep.
Um, I think maybe sit the rest of this year, jump in maybe to a new situation and kind of see, maybe you go be a backup in a year for San Francisco or a Miami or some kind of situation like that. Get yourself around a team with a lot of offensive weapons and hopefully it leads you in the right direction.
Yeah. I think there's still talent there. Like I know everyone's kind of calling for him already. 18 completions for 84 yards, which is the most completions for an under 100-yard game in I think post merger history. So he's breaking some records in a bad way, but man, I'm telling there's been some flashes even through two games. There's been some throws where I'm like there's not every guy in the league can make that throw. Like and
Yeah.
there's guys that we consider in the top half that I don't know if they can make that throw. So yeah, there is a lot wrong in Carolina, and I'm not saying Bryce Young is scot free of blame, but he's definitely not. If you're like pick one problem here, it's not Bryce Young. I can almost guarantee you that. It's you're going to be pointing up to the press box and the owner's box where David Tepper sits. That's the problem.
Yeah. No, I think it's an interesting situation. I think hopefully long term he finds what the best solution is for him.
Yep.
Um, Now we got to talk about a little QB controversy here. Russell Wilson obviously was named the starter uh, going into the season, and now looking at it, Justin Fields is 2-0, 2-0 through 2 games. I think it's going to be really hard for the Steelers to switch back. I'm not sure what it's going to take at this point, to be honest with you.
I mean, as long as they're winning games, and I don't even care if Justin Fields is playing overly well, if he's not costing you games, right? He's not downright playing bad, right? He's playing at a decent to okay to good level, and you're 2-0, he stays in. I mean, that's just as simple as that. I mean, Russell Wilson, and this is the thing that has really frustrated me about Russell Wilson in the last 2 to 3 years, is you're not the same guy you were. Like this carefree attitude where, where they're asking him in the preseason, oh, how do you feel about the Steelers? Do you think you've locked up the starting job, this, that? And he's like, oh, that's nothing we got to worry about. We're just coming in here to play football. Like, you don't have the ability to just scot free walk in here and ride off your resume anymore. You haven't shown me anything in 2 to 3 years, right? And I think in his mind, right now, he gets healthy, he's the starter because that's how it was in the preseason. And I'm Russell Wilson. You can't just keep me on the bench for Justin Fields.
Yeah, yeah, they can.
Yeah, in his head, you're like, the guy that wasn't good enough for Chicago isn't the guy that's going to keep me on the sidelines. And buddy, I'll tell you, from the last 2 to 3 years we've seen of you, it doesn't take much to keep you on the sidelines these days.
Yeah.
It's not a low bar to pass there. So I think you have to ride with Fields. And I'm caught on whether I think the Steelers are going to or not. History says they're going to stick with Justin Fields because they
Mhm.
would rather stick to their guns until proven wrong 10 times over before feeling like they're going to make the move too early. But at the same time, the original decision was Russell Wilson, right? So are
Yeah.
they going to stick to what they said and go to Russell Wilson despite that not being what's best for business?
See, and I not only do I think it's best for business, but if you look at the long term of the team, Russell Wilson at best was going to be a 1 to 2 year patch, right? He
Yeah.
was never going to be the long term solution.
Mhm.
Justin Fields, there's enough tread on those tires where, you've got him. I think what did they sign him or they traded for him? They
They
traded
just
for him.
traded for him. They've got this year.
They've
Both
got
him and Russ's contracts
free
are up at the
agents,
end of this
right?
year. Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, depending on how he plays, if you can get him on a more affordable deal at the end of the year, I think it's a really intriguing proposition to say, hey, Russ, thanks for coming over for cheap, but you're getting paid no matter what. And this guy might be the long term answer in Pittsburgh for us. We've
Mhm.
kind of got to see how this plays out.
I mean, if they can. Now, I don't think Arthur Smith is the guy to do it, but I think Justin Fields' issue has always been that he hasn't been well schemed around. And I think people ask why Lamar Jackson was such the instant success that he was coming into this league as a starter, as a full time starter after he took over for Joe Flacco versus how Fields has done since. We've seen Caleb Williams struggle in 2 games. Jaden Daniels hasn't hopped off the page in 2 games, right? Like that mold hasn't seen the instant success that Lamar saw, and it's because Baltimore retooled everything. Like it was a full roster and playbook dump and reset because you cannot hand Lamar Jackson Joe
Yeah.
Flacco's playbook and expect success. And to me, that's kind of what Chicago did, not to a certain extent. And I think to a certain extent, I think New England did it to Cam too. I feel like he got a little bit of Brady's playbook with a couple read options and QB powers tossed in. I
Not
think they
really.
did it a little bit. I think I've always been lower on how well he was in New England than most.
He was
But
he he was great for the first 8 weeks. Like
yeah,
he was good. The thing I'll say too that is not fair about Lamar that you're not stating is he watched for what 10 weeks, eight
yeah,
weeks, so he basically had a half a season of sitting on the bench and
and learning.
in learning and kind of getting used to like how the NFL functions. Where the guys you just mentioned, like Jaden Daniels and Caleb Williams, were kind of just hurled in short off season, didn't play a ton in the preseason for the most part, right?
Yeah,
Like,
and that's how all quarterbacks are now. Which Tom Brady's talked about that before, and
yeah,
to a certain degree, I do agree with it. Like because I could take it over to basketball and you see the same thing. The guys that get drafted and are hurt their entire rookie year, and
Mhm.
then their actual rookie year is their second year after getting drafted, almost always win rookie of the year. Outside of Chet Holmgren versus Victor Wembanyama last year, that's because
That wasn't really
Wemby's a
fair.
different case.
Yeah.
But Blake Griffin, Joel Embiid, Ben Simmons, any guy who can sit for a full year and be in a professional either NBA or NFL weight room and film room for a full year before seeing the field are always better off for it.
And
Almost always better
if you
off.
were to ask me which rookie QB I feel the best about through the first 2 weeks, I'd say it's a tie. It's a tie between Michael Penix and Drake May, and neither one of them has seen the field,
Exactly.
right? Like,
I haven't seen any bad things at all.
yeah, I haven't seen anything bad because they haven't played. Um, so I think it's smart to kind of sit guys. I think there's guys you have to play. I think ultimately that's what hurt Trey Lance was not being able to play right away.
Yep.
Like a guy like that who hasn't played a lot of football and had a lot of time to learn and process. Um, you don't want to kill a guy's confidence either, but some guys you got to play. Some guys you can allow to sit. You know what I mean? You can give them time to sit back and absorb. So, um, I don't know. It'll be interesting. I just don't see a world where Russ comes back and has to start outside of maybe of Fields getting hurt.
I agree.
So
Unless he plays that bad. Like if Fields has a 3-pick day, yeah, he's probably going to get benched for us. I think that, that happens. But until that happens, keep Russ on the sidelines. Don't mess up what's working.
see, and that's crazy. Now that like they're 2-0 to start the season, they could be a playoff team. Like I had them finishing, I think, fourth in this division,
Yeah.
and now I'm sitting here and I'm like, this team might make the playoffs. Like just the amount of breezy games they have left. They get the Giants how many times? Twice? No, once. They get the Giants. They have the Raiders on there. They have the Jets, the Commanders. They get the Browns twice still. So who knows? Like there's some easy wins. Now the last 4 games of the regular season are just brutal. At Philly, at Baltimore versus Chiefs, at home versus Chiefs and Bengals. So that
Yeah,
last 4 is a gauntlet run.
they'll sweep Baltimore or split the series. They
Yeah.
always do. It doesn't matter how bad Pittsburgh is, how good Baltimore is. Like unless Lamar Jackson is the full healthy starter, he has a good record. But the years he's been hurt, they've dominated Baltimore for even while having a worse team. They just find a way to win those division games for no good God reason. 18-10, the ugliest game you've ever seen, and that's just Pittsburgh Steelers football these days.
I'm
Be
kind of
10 of those games for a first round exit.
I'm kind of sad some of the lowering scoring teams aren't going to play. Like a Steelers Patriots game this year would just be a slugfest at
Oh my God.
7-10. Throw Seattle in there, another one. Can those 3 teams play each other at the same time?
I want to
Can
see
we?
Dallas throw New England or throw Dallas in there too. Throw that no rushing offense. Just
Yeah.
they've just grinded out. They can't do nothing on the ground.
All right. The next one this is kind of a quick hitter here. Because I don't fully buy it yet. We were talking about it before the show, but Sam Darnold's revenge tour. This man terrorizes teams early in the season. I don't know
Yeah.
what this man gets up his butt that just early in the season. We were talking about in Carolina when they went 3-0 and then didn't win a game the rest of the year, which is just wild to say. If
Yeah.
that's actually how it happened, I didn't look it up. I should have. Was that 2020? Would that
I
been the
want
2020
to
season?
20 or 21, yeah.
But that man is on fire right now.
And the way he closed out that game against the Niners without Justin Jefferson, without Jordan Addison, without TJ Hawkinson, he went out there with Aaron Jones and a couple of receivers you've never heard of and just torched a very talented 49ers defense. And then is screaming, "You should have never cut me," in the locker room after the game. I mean,
I love it.
that is MVP type stuff, man. He is playing at an outrageous level. You could like this is why you can't overreact to the first 2 weeks of the season. Because I could sit here and tell you right now that the 3 best quarterbacks in football through 2 weeks are Derek Carr, Baker Mayfield, and Sam Darnold. And you're like, I mean, through 2 weeks, it's hard to deny. Like those guys have been tearing it up. So It's crazy.
I'm trying to find it. Where is there? Oh, they won 2 more games. Damn.
Oh, they did. Damn.
Yeah, they started off 3-0, then they won 2 more games. But
It's still pretty bad.
it flew off the rails quickly. It went
Yeah.
downhill fast. Um, man,
Yeah.
I love
Imagine
how we
going into week 4 and they're going to a fortune teller to like, you've already won over half your games this year, so don't get excited.
don't get too excited, Carolina. You guys, it's kind of funny that in a lot of regards, people still think of like the laughing stocks of the league. You'd name, you used to name 2 names. You'd say Detroit and you'd say Cleveland.
Cleveland. Yeah.
Cleveland's been pretty good for the last 4 or 5 years or so.
Yeah.
Like not great, but not bad.
They
And
haven't
then
been the dumpster fire. Yeah.
and then since Detroit traded for Jared Goff, who would have thought Jared Goff was the missing piece in
The
Detroit?
savior of Detroit football.
Jared
Jared
Goff.
Goff.
But they've been pretty good ever since then too. Carolina's been horrendous. Like Carolina's been bad, and they're like they have to be that team by far and away. I
Yeah,
mean, they traded DJ Moore, a first round pick. I don't even remember who that 10th pick ended up being that year for the Bears.
Darnell Wright.
Darnell Wright. They traded Darnell Wright. Caleb Williams was in that trade. And then I don't know who the Bears took her in the early second. Did they trade that pick? They might have.
I'm gonna pull it up because I just saw it the other day. I want to know who they took with the picks. If I said trade revisited, tell me who they drafted. Okay, here we go. So it's DJ Moore, Darnell Wright, Tyreek Stevenson, who's their secondary corner behind Jalen Johnson, Caleb Williams, and then they still have a 2025 second this year.
Yeah, this second, which will probably be pick 33. Right?
33 or 34, yeah.
Yeah, like it's crazy to say that out loud, right? That they traded all of that for Bryce Young. And that's not I like Bryce Young. I don't think this is Bryce Young's fault.
No, not at all.
But it will go down as the most horrendous trade of all time, without question.
Yeah. It's definitely, especially if Chicago can do anything. Now, if Chicago crashes and burns,
I don't even think that matters.
It's one of those, like, I definitely think it's going to go down as one of the worst ever, right? But if the Bears fall apart and Caleb Williams is on another team in 4 years, you're like, okay, well, I mean,
yeah,
not bad. But if they do anything what we think they're going to do, yeah, it's going to probably go down as worse than the Ricky Williams trade, and that's hard to do.
Yeah, it's up there. Like everyone dogged on the Russell Wilson deal. Like that one was pretty bad. Looking back at it, the money is the worst part. Yeah, now the only thing that's gotten Denver's been so lucky because that trade was bad, but the Carolina trade makes that one look not so bad. And then you look at the contract, you go, that's a terrible contract. And everyone's now looking at Deshaun Watson being like, that contract's way worse than the Russell Wilson contract. So it's so wild to me how they've just like, we did something horrible, but it was the second worst in this time frame.
We got away with it.
We pulled the old Peyton Manning, always second best of my time.
Yep, that's what I do.
All right, we're going to talk about the Tua situation here for a second. It's scary, right? There's no other words to kind of use there to define the situation. Honestly hope he does what's best for him. I know he says he has no plans of retiring. I wonder if the league's not going to just not clear him medically, because it's just such a bad. Because if he gets seriously hurt on a football field, it'll be the worst thing for the league, right?
Yeah,
it'd be terrible for him too. Like I'm not trying to diminish the value for him, but from the league's perspective, right? If he were to, something terrible were to happen on that field, it would just be a bad look, right? Ever since the Damar Hamlin hit, they've been trying to avoid a situation like that and to bring the just the risk that Tua's at. He's such a high risk. I wonder if they don't kick him all the money he's owed on the rest of that contract and say, hey, let's call this a career. You've had a good run.
Yeah, I mean, and it doesn't help that 2 of these 3 major concussions we've seen have been on prime time football.
Yeah.
The only game on at the time. And there's a chance that the third one was also there. I just don't remember. I remember Buffalo Thursday night, and then it was Buffalo again this last week.
Yeah,
and
Buffalo, yeah.
It does not, again, like, guys get concussed. It happens, right? Julian Edelman and Danny Amendola were concussed like half of their New England careers from what they recant on podcasts. But like fully locking up to the point where your fingers are stiffening up and you're over your face like this multiple times. Like you have multiple concussions where your fingers, like it looks like you're paralyzed on the football field.
Yeah.
That is a horrible, horrible look, and not for the NFL, not for the game of football, for the mom of the 7-year-old who has been begging her to play football the last 2 years. It's bad for him. It's bad for the future of football because the more those injuries happen on a national scale, the more people aren't going to want to play, and rightfully so. I mean, that's a terrifying thing to just be like, oh yeah, I just almost watched that guy get paralyzed multiple times on national television. Sure, son, I'll sign your permission slip to go play middle school football. Like,
It's an interesting conversation we had at work the other day where we were talking about, the risks of signing up when you play football for a living, right? Like
yeah,
there's certain risks associated with it. Now, does that mean the NFL should not try to minimize, hits to the head? I don't think
yeah,
so. But it is kind of like being a professional boxer, an MMA fighter. You understand the risk that you sign up for when you decide to be a pro football player, right? We
yeah,
can't not acknowledge that in that same breath without mentioning, you know, uh, we need to do everything we can to minimize it. And
yeah.
I just would hate for something more to happen to Tua. That's why ultimately I hope, he does something that's smart for his health. So,
Yeah, I agree. And, no plans to retire. I hope he's at least thought about it, seriously considered the options going forward.
yeah.
And yet again, for the NFL's sake, like trying to limit those things from happening. And yeah, it's a risk associated with playing football. It doesn't mean that the league wants that nationally televised to 3 million people. A guy getting locked up like that multiple times. It's scary stuff to watch. Like, it's not pleasing to the eye. It's very scary stuff. So hopefully he seriously considers it. I don't think he's going to. Now I will say this: if he comes back, I think putting him on the IR was the right move, right?
Yeah.
Because
Gives
regardless
him
of what happens
time.
in the concussion protocol, he's got 4 weeks to figure it out, right? And I think to me that was kind of the Dolphins being like, "Hey, man, obviously we just paid you. We don't want you to retire, but like." You're going to take 4 weeks to figure this shit out. You're not just going to go through concussion protocol and be back next week or the week after. You're going to sit on the shelf for 4 weeks and think about it, right? And just see what your future is going to look like. So if it happens again, he comes back and that happens again, I don't think the league will clear him. I don't
Yeah.
think especially one more concussion like that. Yeah, the league's not going to clear him. I think you hit the
My
nail on
only
the head.
thought is as time goes on, it becomes a higher risk. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
110% every
So
time you
if we,
trot back out there.
yeah, it comes even higher risk. So ultimately, I hope he makes the best decision for him.
Yeah.
You ready for some pump the brakes?
Yeah, we brought up before we get into it. Before we brought up Cam Newton earlier. We were talking about him in New England. Did you see he's getting a tryout to possibly join the Carolina practice squad?
Again,
Yeah,
another a
uh,
comeback to the comeback.
I'm back. Yeah, I mean, we'll see what happens. I mean, I don't know. Honestly, I that also could have been a completely fake report. I didn't remember checking my sources too well on that one, so
Nice.
take that with a grain of salt. But I wouldn't be surprised. It's Carolina. It's Cam Newton. Why not?
Let me see if reacts to rumor. See, it seems like it's a rumor.
It's a rumor that he's going to try. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised. I don't think Cam Newton's going to sign up to be a practice squad guy, though. That's the only issue.
Carolina Panthers will sign Cam Newton to replace Bryce Young. That's an article. I love that headline. That's a horrendous headline, but I don't know. I don't see anything that makes that seem legit. All right. First, we're gonna run through a list of every team that's 2-0. You're gonna tell me if they're good or if they're an imposter. You ready to go?
Oh, bring it on.
All right. You got the San Diego Chargers or Los Angeles Chargers. Holy cow!
Hey, man. I still call him San Diego. LT and Antonio Gates will never leave my heart. Um, so, wait. Reframe the question one more time for me. You said pretenders or
Good or imposters?
good or
So,
imposters?
so these teams good, legitimate playoff contenders, or is this team an imposter at 2-0?
Playoff contenders? Yeah, I
Mhm.
would say that the Chargers are good. I think
Okay.
schematically they're going to be good. They should be able to run the football. The thing that will derail this team is the injuries at running back. And boy, J.K. Dobbins has been a top 5 back in the league through 2 weeks. And as much as I love it because I've always wanted to just see him succeed after just watching him come out of Ohio State, it does kill me. I will not lie to you. It does kill me on the inside a bit. So it's definitely a very bittersweet moment, but he's tearing it up. I mean, they haven't really even needed Gus Edwards a ton because JK's running for 11 carries for 110 yards, averaging almost 10 yards a carry both weeks. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think the Chargers are good. I think they're probably a 10 or 11 playoff or 10 or 11 win playoff team.
All right. A team we talked about earlier, the Pittsburgh Steelers.
I'm gonna go with imposters here. I mean, are they contenders to make the playoffs? Yes. I mean, it's hard not to be through two
Mhm.
weeks or going 2-0. But to me, I think this team is just a little too shaky at the offensive line spot. And again, if you have question marks at quarterback, you have one big question mark on your entire season. And we're still debating whether they're going to bring Russell Wilson back when he's healthy or not. We don't think they should, but we don't know for a fact that they're not going to, and that's an issue. So if you're going to bring dissension, I think that's one of the easiest ways to destabilize a locker room is starting the year 2-0 and being like, all right, we're going to go to the guy that hasn't taken a snap in the regular season for us yet. That's who we're going to turn to now after this 2-0 start, and not ride with Justin Fields at that point. So I'm going to go with imposters for the Pittsburgh Steelers.
The Houston Texans.
This team's definitely contenders. They're good. The offense has played well, right? The three-headed monster in the receiver room. Joe Mixon's looked like a whole new running back. The line's been solid. C.J. Stroud's good. And they have a defensive head coach, so the other side of the ball is going to play. Will Anderson's gotten better. Remember, they added Daniel Hunter this offseason. I think the Texans are the real deal.
The Minnesota Vikings.
Oh man, Minnesota. I'm gonna say imposters here, and this is a tough one. I'm still unsure if we're gonna get 17 weeks of what we're getting from Sam Darnold right now. I don't really think that that's the biggest question, in my opinion, because I think we're gonna get close to it, and I think he'll put him towards the race. Even under Mike Zimmer, the defense the last couple of years of Mike Zimmer was very shaky. The defense was, despite still having quite a few prominent names and decent talents.
Yeah.
They lost Neil Hunter, but they bring in Jonathan Greenard from the Texans. I think is the guy they brought in to replace him. I think that defense is going to kind of fall apart, and I do think they're kind of a prolonged injury at receiver away. I say that after he shredded the Niners without his top two guys, but and also I don't know if Aaron Jones is going to hold on for the whole season. And I don't think they're prepared to lose Aaron Jones either. I don't know who their backup is. So, and they're in a really tough division. It's very difficult for me to say that they're playoff contenders while knowing that Green Bay and Detroit are probably going to be in that dance. And if Chicago turns it around, like they're going to be fighting at the same spot, right? Like it's
Yeah.
very hard. You got to be pretty confident to call a team a lock for the playoffs when all four of their teams in that division are going to be competing for spots. So,
Yeah. It'll be interesting to watch. The New
yeah.
Orleans Saints.
Oh man, I don't know this team is by far and away the most mind-boggling through 2 weeks. It makes
They've played so well. It's
it
crazy.
it makes no sense, dude. I it makes me want to I don't want to try to talk and act like I know anything about football the way that these guys are playing right now because we
What's
thought
what
consummate one of the worst teams in the league this year.
can't remember their OC's name. It's Kubiak's son.
Yeah, Clint Kubiak.
Clint Kubiak, that's what it is.
They fucking did it again. The Kubiak family strikes again. This offense is good. I don't know what's going on.
Crazy.
It doesn't make any sense. They
He is got to be. He's going to be. If this season continues anything like it's been, this season will go down as like one of the craziest one hit wonders of like. This feels like the 2023 Golden State Warriors. You're just like,
oh yeah.
or what was it, 2022, where they're just like, man, why is the team good? It shouldn't be
Why are
good.
they just winning games? Yeah,
Yeah,
like they scored on 15 straight drives to open the year. You know what the next closest team to that? I don't remember the team. I think it was like '03. Somebody scored on 7 straight drives to open the year. So they doubled the previous record.
that's crazy.
Like they took Derek Carr out at the end of last game, so he missed like 2 or 3 drives in the game, and they punted twice there. But as far as Derek Carr led drives go, they have not punted all year through 2
Dang.
games. That is ridiculous. Now, does that continue to happen? I don't know. There's no way it can.
No.
There's no way. But in that weak a division, it's hard to sit here and say that team can at least win that division. I mean, it's not a great division to.
Yeah.
It's not a tough one. I'm going to say that they're playoff contenders. I can't believe. I don't know if they're going
Dang.
to go far, but again, they're going to have 2 free games against the Panthers at some point this year, right? I
Yeah.
mean, they're going to have 2 games against the Falcons, who have looked a little shaky. They looked good on Monday night against Philly, but and then Tampa will be a little bit of a toss up. Tampa's looked really well as well, but I'm gonna go with they are. I think if they were 2-0, like the way that the Steelers got there, I might be a little bit more out on them. But I mean, they've scored 40 in the first 2 games. It's,
It's crazy. It is nuts.
we were
And
like Dennis Allen's getting fired in week 5, and you're like they've outscored their opponents like 82-22 in the first 2 weeks of the year.
I think it might even be worse than that. I think it's 91-29 is what it is.
That's like you're like, what the fuck is going on, man?
Wild.
It
Completely
doesn't make any sense.
biggest swing and the miss ever.
Yeah.
All right. Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
I'm gonna have to go playoff contenders here as well. I think
2 teams
Baker,
out of the NFC South. That'd be real interesting.
that's a playoffs right there. That's something. Um, yeah, I think Baker Mayfield has kind of finally found a home. The only thing that brings question to that is their head coaching situation. Like if they stumble or don't go anywhere, I could definitely see them looking to replace. Is it Lovie Smith that's still in charge there, right? Not
Where?
Lovie Smith. Todd
Oh,
Bowles.
now I was like, now that you said it, I'm not going to get it, but it is Todd Bowles. Yeah.
Yeah, Todd Bowles. I could see them maybe trying to move on from him. I think that might shake things up for Baker, but like his teammates love him. The city likes him. I mean, it's kind of a perfect fit. He got tossed to the side by Cleveland after delivering them to the playoffs for the first time in over 20 years and winning a playoff game for the first time in God knows how long, 25 years. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers are coming off, hey, man, yeah, we won a Super Bowl. We had Tom Brady for a year, but like that was 1 year. And all of a sudden we're just back to ground zero. We have all these good guys, but we don't have a team to lead. Well, here comes along Baker Mayfield coming out of Carolina last year, and he wins a playoff game in year 1 against Philly, and now they're rolling again. I mean, the offensive line's going to have to hold there because I think they did get worse there throughout the offseason, right? They lose Ryan Jensen to retirement, a shock retirement at that.
Yeah.
So there's some definite gaps for Tampa Bay, but I think Baker, especially from what we've seen in 2 weeks, he wills him across the finish line at this point.
It'll be interesting. That team has done nothing but get older. Like there isn't a ton of young talent on that team.
Yeah. Yeah.
And surprisingly, Rachaad White has not been a vital piece quite as much as I thought he was going to be.
No, remember everybody thought he was going to tear it up this year, and I feel like he's been
lackluster to say the least. So
to say the least, yeah.
But Chris Godwin is having like an all-out season. Like it's truly been impressive to see what Chris Godwin's done this season. I would not have guessed he would be playing as well as he's played. It's
and then you got Mr. Consistent, who's going to get his 1,000 on the other side.
Yeah. You wouldn't even have to talk about Mike.
Yeah.
Mike Evans, I'm very curious to see how long he holds this up because he could be really intriguing if he does this. Like, if he passes Larry Fitz, he might be the most consistent receiver in the NFL's history.
Yeah. And to say that somebody is more consistent than Larry Fitzgerald sounds like an outlandish statement, but the numbers don't lie at this point.
All right, the Seattle Seahawks.
Oh, God. This team. I really want to say contenders because the rest of that division Who would have thought that the Cardinals were probably the best looking division or best looking team coming out of that
Yeah.
division through the first 2 weeks?
Well, I talked about injuries and I talked about the wrong team.
Yeah,
Is the funny thing. I was like, man, the 49ers are going to struggle with injuries this year. It has been the Rams. It has
the
been,
Rams have gotten derailed.
yeah.
I'm gonna go with pretenders here. Um, this is a tough call because Mike McDonald's defense is only going to get better as the year goes on. They're going to be really, really hard to score on down the stretch. But I think they've been really Geno Smith reliant through the first 2 weeks. I was watching a TikTok, some tape of him and how well he's played through the first 2 weeks. But I think if you are asking Geno Smith to shoulder the load and carry you to victory week in, week out, it is not going to work for an entire season. Like, he's going to give you some damn good games. You're going to feel some really high emotions on the ups of that roller coaster, but there are going to be some low lows, and unfortunately, they're going to be at the wrong times of the year down the stretch when it matters in those divisional games. And I think they're going to kind of fall apart in those spots. And I think the personnel on defense will kind of fall through. I think Mike McDonald's scheme is damn good, and they've got quite a few pieces to make it work. But the middle of that defense, the middle linebackers have only gotten older, right? They haven't really gotten a ton better. And they cut their two starting safeties from last year, right? So the middle of that defense is a little shaky. They got great guys on the outside. You know, you have Leonard Williams up front, but I think the Seahawks will kind of fall apart as the year goes.
They feel like they're a year ahead. Like
Yeah.
them playing this well throughout this far in the year, like it feels like they're just a year ahead of where they should be.
Yeah.
All right, last two teams on this. I'm not going to let you spend more than 30 seconds on these two. We have the
Okay.
Kansas City Chiefs.
They're pretend or they're whoa
Whoa!
whoa Woj bomb of the year right there. No, they're contenders. I mean, it's the Kansas City Chiefs. I'm not going to sit here and talk about it. You know, they lose Hollywood Brown for the year. It doesn't matter. Andy Reid, Patty Mahomes, they will persevere.
Yeah, they'll be fine. All right, the Buffalo Bills. Why are you even thinking about this one?
Playoff, yeah, they're playoff contenders. I don't know if they're going to do much because I think their offense is going to be easy to shut down in the playoffs. If you can just kind of slow the run game down and try to make them one dimensional, I think they're going to be easy to beat. But yeah, they're contenders for the playoffs
Yeah,
for sure.
yeah, without a doubt, because Miami's going to miss Tua for 4 weeks, which is going to damper their performance dramatically. And the Jets are still the Jets. So
Yeah, that's I was like, dude, I was like, the Jets are the fucking Jets.
so I mean, the Bills are going to be fine in that division.
The
All right,
Jets have Hassan Reddick, so
now we're going to go. This list should also be pretty fairly straightforward and pretty simple. Are they a bad team or did they have a rough start?
go.
These are all the teams that are 0-2. The Denver Broncos.
Uh,
I have them to make the playoffs, and boy, do I regret that now.
yeah, I think this might be a bad team.
I think it is as well.
I think we got a little hung up on the Bo Nix preseason hype, and I think it burned us a bit.
Yeah, again, they're a year out from being good. I just thought, maybe I'd call my shot, but against the Steelers, it did not look good, and the schedule
Yeah.
doesn't get too much easier. So,
I mean, if Bo Nix figures it out again, it seems ridiculous to say, but they've been a quarterback away since Peyton Manning retired, and I still kind of feel like it's the case. You toss Sam Darnold, Baker Mayfield in there right now, I think they're sitting at 2-0. So,
yeah.
which is a ridiculous statement to say.
All right, the Tennessee Titans.
I think this is a bad team. Not sure how I feel about Brian Callahan absolutely tearing into Will Levis on the sideline in the post-game press conference. Not saying that it's not warranted at all, but
I like it. I think he's honest, and I think he's fresh, and I think Will Levis sucks, and every other head coach would just sit there and be like, oh, he tried his best, and we're going to do the best we can as a team. But no, I love that he's just like, yeah, that sucked. I don't know what this guy's doing. Like, what do you do?
yeah.
Like, yeah.
I hope in the building he's like, listen, Will, like I want you to know I'm not trying to sit there and call you a fucking idiot. That's not the goal of this. But I know you're smarter than that, and I know you're a better football player than that. So be better than that.
Yeah.
That's what the message should be. Sometimes I think it's coming off harsh, but yeah, I think that's a bad team. We knew that was going to be a bad team. That's what it is.
All right, the New York Giants.
New York Giants, bad team. Bad at quarterback, bad at running back. Moving on.
That's all we need right there.
Yeah.
I will say Malik Neighbors is like a shining light. Like he had a
He
pretty
is
good
good.
week 2. So
Yeah,
I'm
they've
excited
got
for
some,
him.
yeah, they've got a lot of pieces, but they're missing the biggest thing. The two biggest things: a reliable run game and a reliable quarterback.
All right, the Indianapolis Colts.
I think this team had a rough start. I still have a lot of faith. Alec Pierce has played really well. They've had a lot of pieces shine, and I think the mesh of Jonathan Taylor and Anthony Richardson in the run game is only going to get better as the year goes on. They're going to miss DeForest Buckner while he's out in the short term, but I think this team is really good. And as far as with how, and we're going to talk about them, with how Jacksonville is kind of floundering right now, I think the Colts should take advantage of that and probably finish second in this division.
All right, the Carolina Panthers.
Bad team. Not going to spend much time. We talked about the Panthers. It starts up top. David Tepper is a cancer, and they're probably not going to be any better till he's gone.
All right, the Baltimore Ravens.
This is a rough start. Pretty obviously a rough start, folks. I could probably soap opera for the next 20 minutes about the first 2 weeks as a Ravens fan. Um, I I want a soap opera about it, but I also don't to keep us under time constraints. So I think I think Baltimore's gonna be fine in the long run.
I agree. No, I don't think it's that complicated, right? I think it's a slow start. And
Yeah,
they were competitive in both games. So it's not like they got their wheels beat. They didn't get their wheels beat off. They lost to the Chiefs for a good game, and they lost a game they shouldn't have lost to the Raiders. And
yeah,
it was close, right? So I think that defense is not as good as we thought. I think Mike McDonald matters, and I think that's a big factor this year.
yeah. A couple things to second there. Firstly, let this sink in that Gardner Minshew has walked into Baltimore with two separate teams the last 2 years and beaten us on our home turf now. He did it last year with the Colts in week 4, and he did it this year in week 2. Um, Mike McDonald. So Baltimore currently best rush defense, worst pass defense in the league. Through 2 weeks last year, Mike McDonald also had the worst pass defense in the league. So give Zach Orr a little bit of credit there. I think that'll kind of fix itself as the year goes on. But the right side of the offensive line is the main problem right now. The fact that we're about to trot Daniel Fale out there at right guard for a third week in a row is honestly one of the most disgusting things in football. I cannot believe that I'm watching John Harbaugh make these mistakes. It is beyond infuriating. So, if you want a personal soap opera, I'll send you a 5-minute voice message on Snapchat about that. Just hit me up. I
Hey,
don't want to. I don't want to waste time on the show. So,
next week you've got a solo episode. So
yeah. Oh, boy, I'll tell you what. If it goes rough in Dallas this week, folks, if you want to hear what's wrong with the Ravens, that'll be next week's episode. The
yeah,
whole thing.
you got a whole episode to do whatever you want. So
It's going to be an hour of why I hate John Harbaugh if we go 0-3 to start the year.
could be interesting.
We'll see what happens.
All right, the Los Angeles Rams. Bad or rough? Bad team or rough start?
Can I add a third option and say check the injury report? Because
Yeah,
it's
they are. I think so. I think rough start would be fair because
yeah,
it's a rough start because of injuries. Really,
yeah,
I think is
yeah.
what that team comes down to.
Holy hell, yeah! Talk about being banged up.
Cooper Cup and Puka Nakua, like probably what 2 top 20 wide receivers on your team gone like
Yeah,
that.
two
Out,
top fantasy options. Yeah, and I've
gone.
been torched in multiple leagues because of both of them. So
Yeah. All right, the Jacksonville Jaguars. Rough start or bad team?
bad team.
I
Holy
agree.
hell!
I think they're a
What is
bad
going
team.
on, man?
This is the end of the Doug Peterson. We talked about Dennis Allen being the first coach fired. It might be Doug Peterson. Like
It
that's
really might be.
crazy.
And if it wasn't for the stature of which he was drafted and how he's been hailed his entire career and the contract he just got, Trevor Lawrence might have got fucking benched. He's looked bad through 2 weeks.
Yeah, it's
So
been rough for this team. It
yeah,
is, and it's not going to get easier.
and it doesn't make any sense. Reliable run game, decent O line, good weapons, number one overall pick, highest paid quarterback in football at one point, decent defense, good head coach. I don't get it.
They could be 0-4. They have the Tex. They have to go to Houston this week, and then they play the Colts. So 0-4 is not out of the question for this team.
Yeah, my current working theory is that Daly's place where they play football in Jacksonville was built on an Indian burial ground because I don't know what else to blame it on at this point.
Yeah. All right, the Cincinnati Bengals.
Probably rough start. It's a mix of both. I think this is a bad team, but I don't think they're this bad, if that makes sense. Like Joe
Right.
Burrow always starts the year slow. They're going to be a lot better than they are right now, but I still don't think this is anything north of a 10-win football team.
That ending at that game was the Chiefs game was a little like I don't know how I feel about it. So
Yeah, I mean,
I have mixed feelings towards it. So
yeah,
they did everything they could. They were in a chance to beat that team. So that's really all you can ask for against the Chiefs. So
yeah, agreed.
all right, we're gonna jump into bets this week. If you or anyone you know is struggling with a gambling addiction, contact the Problem Gambling Helpline at 800-522-4700. Professionals are available 24 hours a day to take your call. Help is available at no cost to the problem gambling or their concerned others. Excuse me. Good week for me last week. 2-1. Chargers -6.5 versus the Panthers. That hit easily. Patriots +3.5 versus the Seahawks hit because of an overtime field goal by the Seahawks. Uh, Patriots were somehow in that game. This team has outperformed any standard that I had for them. Only one that didn't hit, Colts -3.5 versus the Packers. Packers won that game, obviously. A little bit of a disappointment for me. How'd you do last week?
Not a good week. I went 1-2 again. I missed on KC -5.5 versus Cincy. God forbid I trust Patrick Mahomes to just put a game away without relying upon last minute heroics or referee interference to win a football game by 2 points against anybody that's worse than 500. Um, the Rams +1.5 versus Arizona. Good effing lord. Worst pick of the week. I thought I was really bad with the Giants in week one. I had them +1.5 versus Minnesota. They got 40 hung on them, and the exact same thing happened to Arizona or to LA. They got a 40 bomb dropped on them by Kyler Murray and the boys. So bad week on that one. The one that I did hit, another under. So my only two successful picks this year are uh, unders with a AFC North team in them. It was Cleveland and Jacksonville under 41.5 in week one. I think it was Cincinnati, or I think it was Pittsburgh and Atlanta in week one that I had the under on it that brought me home some coins. So you're going to see a theme there. I might ride with that again, considering that it's currently hitting for me.
So through 2 weeks, that brings me to 4-2, Owen to 2-4. My picks this week is Pats +6.5 versus the Jets. Pats are playing above their level, right? How long can they keep this up for? I'm not really sure. But 6.5 is a lot for the New York Jets, who are a struggling team, and that Patriots defense has looked really, really good. So I like a struggling offense versus a good defense, and you're going to give me a touchdown pretty much. I will pretty much always take that.
Yep.
Next pick I got Chargers +1.5 versus the Steelers. Chargers on the road against the Steelers. It's going to be a close game. I just like the Chargers right now.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. This is a pick that I thought about before you punched it in there. 100% agree. But I will tell you this: if it's a pick that I liked at +1.5, that means Pittsburgh's dropping 40 this week, and you're going to lose that bet. So,
Yeah.
if you really want to get crazy, throw yourself a $5 on Pittsburgh to score more than 40 points. You might return a couple grand because, boy, I've been bad with +1.5 lines so far. So we'll see.
All right, last pick of the week. Probably my most confident pick of the week, believe it or not. Seahawks -4.5 versus the Dolphins. Skylar Thompson, who's not, he's a younger quarterback going against a Mike McDonald defense. I know he has all the weapons. I just like Mike McDonald a lot. There's a reason I picked the Seahawks to make the playoffs. This is going to be a game where you see why, because I think Skylar Thompson is going to get thrown out there, and I think he's really going to struggle against that team.
Yeah, it's one of those things where I agree with you, but also I've seen Skylar Thompson compete with Josh Allen in a playoff game, so who the hell knows what's going to happen? Yeah, I like your picks. I think you're in for another good week. We'll see if I can break the curse of my 1-2 every week to start. I've got Houston and Minnesota over 45.5. Both these teams have been getting up and down the field. I feel like it's going to be that type of game. Again, I worry about Minnesota's defense. And if it's going to turn into a shootout, then I think they should pretty easily handle the 45.5 mark. My AFC North under of the week is going to be the Giants versus Cleveland under 38.5. It
I
is
like
a very
this.
it's a low line, but again, Atlanta versus Pittsburgh was 18-10, right? I just cashed Cleveland and Jacksonville under 41.5. It's only 3 more points. It's a really good Cleveland defense versus a Giants offense that sucks, and it's a pretty good Giants pass rush against a bad quarterback in Deshaun Watson. So I think that should be a pretty safe under for the week. And as far as the third pick goes, without picking the Chargers plus 1.5, I was bouncing around between a couple picks. I don't mind Baltimore minus 1.5 versus Dallas. I think they're going to be the winner of the two disappointing teams through 3 weeks of football. But the ultimate pick for me is going to be Buffalo minus 4.5 versus Jacksonville. I'm not sitting here and saying that I'm like oh so super confident in the Buffalo Bills offense. To tell you what I am confident is that the Jacksonville Jaguars are a bad team. That's what
Yeah,
I've seen through 2 weeks, and 4.5 is a hair high to try to cover, but it's less than a touchdown, and I think
more than a field goal. Yeah,
it's more than a field goal. But again, I just Jacksonville has not played good football, and they're going to have to go to Buffalo against Bills Mafia and Josh Allen, and I don't think that game's going to come down to a field goal.
that's
So,
in Buffalo. Oh God, that line. I like that a lot. Then.
is it? Yeah, I thought it was in
No,
Buffalo.
no, it is. I looked. You're right. That's crazy. I thought it would have been Jack. You told me 4.5 at Jacksonville. I'd be like, yeah, that's a tough
That's
line to
about
cover,
right.
but they can do it. But at home, that's even more nuts. So
Yeah, that's. I mean, so because what we always talk about, it's usually 3 points for home field advantage. You're going to tell me the Buffalo's on the up 1.5 on Jacksonville? That's crazy.
crazy. Yeah,
That's
I would.
crazy after the first 2 weeks of football. And again, it's not that Buffalo's looked like world beaters. Jacksonville looks bad,
Bad. Yeah.
bad. So, yeah, I think Buffalo's going to kind of run the football around on them. They're going to let Josh Allen do his thing, and they're going to get up and down the field. So,
Well, sweet. Um, that's all we got for you this week, folks.
that's it.
Owen's doing a solo show next week. I'll be out of town for work, so you'll get just Owen next week. I'll put my bets in, so he'll have to read off my bets and still hold me accountable for that, and all that good stuff. I'll try to send him notes on why I picked the teams I picked.
I
Um,
appreciate that.
but yeah, Thursdays is probably going to be our regular release day going forward. So keep your eyes out for us then. And got anything else for these people?
Yeah, as far as what that solo show is going to look like, I definitely will spend a bit of the time talking about what's gone wrong with the Baltimore Ravens season through 2 to 3 weeks at that point. If they lose to Dallas in a bad fashion, it may be half the show, unfortunately, folks. I was driving home the other day and was talking to a fellow Ravens fan, and was like ranting on voice message on Snapchat, and I, let go of the button to send it, and it was like 3.5 to 4 minutes long, and I was like, oh shit, I'm a little teed up about this, and obviously, who wouldn't be after a supposed Super Bowl contender starts on 2? But I'll try not to make that the entire show. I'll try to talk about some of your favorite teams. So the solo shows are the best spots to get fan questions in. So if you got them, send them. I want to talk about as many people's favorite teams as I can. So if you're like, hey man, I don't have a question, but talk about the Commanders, I'll do some research and we'll talk about Jaden Daniels and the Commanders for 10 minutes or so. So whatever it is you guys want to hear, get it in, because if not, it leaves me more time to talk about my own team, and I'll make it sound good because I know the most about my own team, but I'm sure not all of you want to tune in to why the Ravens suck through 3 weeks of football so far. So again, whatever you want to hear, get it in. I'll talk about it. Help me fill out that hour as much as I can, and it'll be a good solo show while Tim's out of the office. Hopefully, I can do him justice while he's gone. So that's all we got for week 3. Make sure to put some money on Tim's bets because he's doing pretty well. Stay the hell away from mine because I kind of suck so far. But until I see you next week for my old solo show, stay safe, stay healthy, and we'll see you guys then.